Welcome to PC Gaming Tech Summary. I'm your host, Gamer. Sit back, take your shoes off, make yourself at home. We're going to talk about something different today. CPU frequency, yes. So I'm going to do some testing of the 12700K. I'm going to overclock the 8 performance cores to 4.8 gigahertz, all core for those 8 cores, and the 4 efficient cores, the small little laptop type cores, are going to be overclocked to 3.9 gigahertz. 1 thread each of those and 2 threads on the performance cores. And then we're going to underclock the CPU. That's right. All 12 cores will be at 3.6 gigahertz. Let's see what we get. Well, we're going to start here with the 12700K and the 3060 gigabyte GPU graphics card. And we're going to have resizable bar on, and with the new Corsair H100i Elite AIO, we're going to have the extreme fan profile, which is basically maximum fans. They do change as required, and the pump setting is on variable, so I'll just let it do what it wants to do instead of forcing it. And the 3.6 gigahertz 1080p result for the Dubai map on Hitman 3, which is in the in-game benchmark. We got an average of 177 frames per second, and once we bumped it up to 4.6 gigahertz, we get a very, very similar result, and there's only a difference of 0.5%. And if we look at Dartmoor, which is a bit more on the CPU, heavier on the CPU, another Hitman 3 map and benchmark, in-game benchmark, we got an average of 131.5, and then with 5.8 gigahertz, just 2 frames per second more. Gives us a difference of 1.6%. Moving over to Cyberpunk, and we've got a 95.6, and at 4.8 gigahertz, we've got 96.3, only a difference of 0.7%. So, switching between the two frequencies, there's really not much of a difference so far. Let's have a look at the 4K results. It's at 3.6 gigahertz, 61.9 for Dubai. And then we've got at 4.8 gigahertz, 61.5. So not much of a difference at all. So basically you can think of it in the margin of error, you know, when you're like 1 frame per second type differences. Dartmoor, 56.8, and at 4.8 gigahertz, 56.8. So really no change. And Cyberpunk 2077, we go from 42.7 to 43.2, so only 0.5 frames per second difference, which is 1.16%. All right. Now, if we have a look at the power usage and the temps, that's what this chart shows. So Dartmoor, I played it 30 minutes. So it is not the in-game benchmark. I'm actually playing the game, got the game running, and at 1080p, 4.8 gigahertz, my average power, my average watts on the CPU were 83. And 3.6 gigahertz, we dropped that frequency and it's only 67. Difference between those two numbers is 21%. Now, if we add up the CPU wattage and the graphics card wattage, we get this figure, 250. Compare those between 4.8 gigahertz and 3.6 gigahertz. The difference is 7%. Now, if we look at 4K results, 68 watts, 4.8 gigahertz, and 49 watts at 3.6. That is a difference of 32.5%. If we combine the GPU and CPU again, we get this figure, and that's a difference of 8.5%. Okay, so that's the result. Let's move on to the next. Okay, Cyberpunk, 4.8 gigahertz at 1080p, 102 watts on the CPU. Oh, it's creating some frames there. And just keep in mind, there's a lot of graphical settings on this game, and ray tracing is running and all sorts, okay? And DLSS, by the way, at ultra performance. Okay, I digress. Oh, I mean, I go off on a tangent. We've got a difference between 102 watts to 62 watts. That is a difference of 49%. Yep. Yeah, pretty big. Okay, let's look at the difference in CPU plus GPU wattage. 242 at 4.8 gigahertz and 198 watts. Difference of 20%. So if all you did was play that game at 1080p, you could save theoretically 20% perhaps on your power bill. All right, because you're getting very similar frames per second. I'll go back and have a quick look at Cyberpunk 1080. Okay. Cyberpunk, here's 1080, 3.6, here's Cyberpunk. So the difference is only less than 1 FPS, okay? It's really no difference. I didn't talk about the degrees Celsius of the CPU package, okay? So Dartmoor, 4.8 gigahertz, 43 degrees C, 3.6 gigahertz, 38. Dartmoor in 4K, 38 degrees, 3.6 gigahertz is 34 degrees. This Corsair is phenomenal. Okay, now if we look at Cyberpunk in 4K, on the CPU there's the difference between 87 and 62 watts, which is a difference of 33.6%. If we add the CPU and GPU, we get these figures. It's only showing up at 4%. So that test probably have to redo, because in this game Cyberpunk, there's huge differences in how the GPU and CPU are being used when you're driving or shooting or running or walking or in a house or whatever. But these stats, very interesting. And our temps at 4.8 gigahertz, 1080p and all that ray tracing going, 50 degrees. Not bad, not bad. And 3.6 gigahertz, oh, dropping down 11 degrees. Over at 4K, nice temps, 48 at 4.8 gigahertz and 39 at 3.6. Well, I'm glad I did these tests. It's very interesting, those results. You know, I've been thinking, these CPU manufacturers, they could create a CPU that has, say, 12 cores, 16 cores, only goes up to 3.8 gigahertz, let's say, and able to play the games smoothly, no stuttering, fantastic frame rates, and all for a lot less money. So you could take that money saved on the CPU and you could put that into maybe a 4K TV, 50-inch, or graphics card. Maybe you have a 4K TV. Have you ever thought of connecting your PC to your 4K TV? Well, if you're a single player gamer, yeah, it's nice to have better clarity and better images in single player games, 1440p or 4K. I looked at the Steam survey and there's a phenomenal amount of people on 1080p. I was really amazed because 4K TVs have been out for quite a while. I've had mine for some time now. And yeah, it works great. So, I don't know. Something to think about anyways. Well, if you'd like to see some more videos on this subject, or a wide variety of subjects for that matter, all you have to do is subscribe, and you'll get notified when those videos are ready. And thanks for joining us here on PC Gaming Tech Summary. And don't forget, you'll be seeing me in the next video.
No.